for the local time is 6:08 a.m. on October 5th. We will be taxiing for the next few minutes, so please remain seated with your seatbelt fastened and all items stowed until the seatbelt sign is turned off. Please make sure you have all your personal belongings before you exit the aircraft, and be careful when opening overhead compartments.
Hello and welcome to the World Wanderers podcast, your source for travel stories, travel destinations, and travel philosophy.
I'm Amanda.
I'm Ryan.
And we're your hosts.
What's up, everybody, and welcome to a brand spanking new edition of the World Wanderers podcast. Before we dig into today's episode, though, we just want to give a shout out to show sponsor italki.com.
Yeah, italki is one of our favorite methods for learning a language. It's a language learning platform where you can hook up with teachers from all over the world who speak the language that you want to learn. And you sign up for an affordable cost, and you get to talk with a language specialist over Skype or over the phone.
Yeah, and you just get to meet like some genuinely cool people living in some cool countries who are teaching Spanish or Punjabi or Mandarin or whatever language you're trying to learn. So if you want to get a free 2 lesson for the price of 1 voucher, go to theworldwanderers.com/italki.
And that's ITALKI.
All right, so it is currently 8 a.m.
No, it's 9:17 in the morning.
It's 9:17 in the morning. We are in Singapore at a Starbucks in Chinatown. 24 hours ago, we were on a plane to San Francisco. And now we arrived here a couple hours ago. So it's just kind of been a whirlwind day. And the flight was really weird, too, because we left San Fran at 10 p.m. and we're on our very first flight. Well, and then the point I was just going to make is that we were flying at night, but because we were flying west, we were kind of chasing the night, so that it was night for like 15 hours or something, which was kind of strange, and didn't really help from a sleep perspective.
Yeah, so we left on Monday, October 3rd at 1:30, essentially, from Penticton, and we flew to Vancouver, had a little bit of a delay there. Couple hours before we flew to San Francisco. Not very much time in San Francisco. I think we only had about an hour and a half, and then we hopped on our plane and took off, like Ryan said, around 11 p.m. And so we were on a plane from 11 p.m. until like the middle of the day North America time, but it was because we're so far ahead here, we kind of missed Tuesday, October 4th, which is kind of funny because it's one of my best friend's birthdays. So it's still her birthday back home, but I'm now on Wednesday. So Ryan was like, oh, I have a call on Thursday. And I was like, well, tomorrow is Wednesday. And he's like, no, today's Wednesday. It's sort of this whole like weird thing in time when you kind of just like miss a whole day.
Yeah, it's a strange feeling. And so flying I guess flying at night especially, but like over the ocean, there's like nothing to look at the entire time. So it was really exciting to kind of pull into Singapore, and you start seeing a couple lights, and you're like, what is that? And you're like, oh shit, that's just all freighters. Like the bay in front of Singapore is just littered with gigantic cargo ships. And then you start to pick out some skyline lights in the distance, land at the airport. Yeah, so what were your first impressions like of Singapore?
Well, we kind of had like an interesting, so we walk off of the plane, and I felt like I was kind of in like a casino in Las Vegas or something. It was like kind of like elevator music and carpeted floors, which was kind of interesting, and like smelled really clean, I guess. And then made our way through customs, immigration, which is super chill, and then it was just kind of like a sort of a luxury hotel, or sort of a luxury airport. What did you think?
Yeah, it's a similar kind of stuff. Something that stands out to me was just how easy customs was. Like, very well set up, they process you quickly, and then immediately afterwards there's a little screen where it's like, rate your experience. So there is like a big incentive for the people doing the checking to actually perform well, which is huge difference compared to going through American customs, where they kind of just like treat you like a shithead or something.
I didn't even notice that rating thing.
Yeah, so that was cool. And then popping out of Singapore, we immediately get our bags, head out of the area, kind of see right away all these people selling SIM cards, and we're like, okay, I hadn't really thought about buying one when we're here. We're just here for 7 days. But there's all these places with 7-day packages. You can get 100 gigs of data for $30 for the month. And we're just like, what? That's crazy.
Well, it's actually kind of funny because you're like, oh my God, this is crazy. And I was like, yeah, like crazy expensive for what you're getting. You're like, it's like gigabytes. Like I thought it was like 100 megabytes because that's what you'd see in Canada. I'm like, 5 days on 100 megabytes? Like that's not, I'm going to use that in like 15 minutes type thing.
Yeah, we sat down and just started watching Netflix for the next 7 days and been fine data-wise. But yeah, we called an Uber up. Really nice Uber driver, spoke perfect English, cruised in the city, showed us around, gave us some highlights. And just, yeah, stellar first impression. Really excited to be here. It's really cool, modern city, clean, warm.
Very warm.
Yeah, so we're kind of a little bit delirious. But what are our...
Well, so one thing that we haven't really mentioned is that we'd booked an Airbnb for our first couple nights, and then as soon as I connected to Wi-Fi in the airport, I had a message that said that something had happened safety-wise to that, and that we can no longer stay there with this other option for a different apartment. And we both just got like kind of a weird feel about it. Like when I went on there, once we were past immigration, it was through somebody else. And I mean, I'm sure it's a friend of this girl's, but I don't know, I just feel weird about it. So we ended up canceling that because they gave us that option and looking for something else. So I feel like much of my morning has been sort of this distraction of like, where are we going to be staying? And still I'm thinking about like, okay, we've got this hostel for one night. Obviously there's the option to stay longer, but like, you know, where are we going to be staying for the rest of the week type thing. And I feel like that's been kind of distracting me from being like fully present in the experiences here.
So we're here for a week before heading off to Manila. Have a little bit of work to do figuring out our accommodation, but today we're gonna wander around and, fueled by caffeine, explore some of the downtown Singapore attractions, and then continue taking you guys around to some of the other cool things to do in this spectacular, I was looking for some alliteration, spectacular city, Singapore.
Yeah, I'm really excited that we drove past like the Marina Bay Sands Hotel, which is the one with the massive boat on top of it, and I guess you can't go up to the infinity pool unless you stay there, and we did look into it, but it's about $400 a night, which is just too much for our budget at this point till we get the World Wonders a little bit more monetized. Or, you know, just win the lottery or something. But we are gonna, I think, probably go up and check that out, check out some of the shopping centers, and just like take in all there is to see with Singapore.
Yeah, and we will check in with you guys very soon, like in 2 seconds from now.
Maybe not that soon, but you know.
So we left that Starbucks and wandered down towards the harbor in Singapore. And Chinatown is kind of like right above downtown, almost like mixed into together. So you don't have to walk very far. And a couple of the first things that kind of strike you when you get out and start walking about is, number one, the heat. It's just like really hot here. It's kind of like walking into a sauna in some ways, especially because of the humidity. It had just rained, and it was like maybe more like a steam room as you walked outside.
Yeah, it was like a tropical jungle type feel, but like in a concrete jungle. And it's something that we hadn't experienced for a really long time. We got quite a bit of humidity within, like, while living in Atlanta, but we kind of moved right as Atlanta was becoming Hotlanta, and our Canadian summer wasn't very hot. So it's like we arrive in Singapore, it's like way more humid than we get in Western Canada in general, like way, way, way more, and quite a bit hotter than we experienced all summer.
And then the other thing that strikes you as you walk around Singapore is it's a big, busy city, but just like very quiet for how much stuff is going on. Like there's noise, there's traffic, there's cars, but even compared to Atlanta, there's no sirens, nobody's honking at each other. The cars are all pretty nice and new, so they're not making a ton of noise either.
Yeah, it kind of took a while before I was like, something feels weird about this city, and then realized that it was the lack of sort of like city noises, like noises that you would commonly identify as things that you hear in a city. And I think that within the whole week that we were in Singapore, I could count on my two hands how many times I heard a horn or a siren, which is pretty amazing.
Yeah, I think maybe even one hand.
Yeah, we just didn't hear anything. Like, there's definitely people going about, but just nobody was yelling, even in Chinatown. Nobody was honking, inappropriate noises in any way. It was just very quiet and peaceful.
So we wandered down through downtown, and you get some pretty cool views of pretty spectacular buildings as you go through downtown. There's one big, like, twin condo looking building that's like gold on the outside. And some cool food markets. We got food, and we headed off towards the Marina Bay Sands, which is this kind of famous hotel, which has, it's like essentially like 3 buildings with like a building like horizontal on top that kind of looks like a boat.
Yeah, and within that boat is the world's highest infinity pool. It's located on the 57th floor. And at this point in time, we weren't really sure if we could go up at all. We had heard that you couldn't swim in the infinity pool unless you stayed there. And we just weren't really sure what our plan was, but we knew we wanted to go check it out, hang out at the harbor, and see if we could go up the tower if possible.
Yeah, and so when we got down there, we did find out that you could pay to go up to the observation deck. And that is exactly what we did. So we're going up the elevator into the Sky Park at the Marina Sands. And you might have heard the thing in the background. And my ears popped.
Just read it by name. Sure. Okay. This way, sir. Okay. Thank you.
Whoa. That is crazy.
This is so cool. Oh my gosh, look at the gardens.
That's just like...
That's so cool.
That, yeah, not real looking.
Oh wow, we can reach out. My stomach just fluttered a little bit.
Wow, look at that stadium over there. Racetrack. This is just unbelievable.
Oh, the racetrack's like around the Ferris wheel. Holy fuck.
So we mentioned earlier that we weren't sure if you could go up the hotel. You can. It costs like $20 to go up.
Which is fine.
Yeah, but then you walk out the elevator and you're just like stuck with a crazy view looking up to the harbor. There's like this turquoise blue water, and it is just...
There is really low-hanging, like, either cloud or smog, though.
Yeah, smog around the city. But yeah, and then there's this trippy garden that you, like, look down upon, and then farther out you just see...
It's like Alice in
an
Wonderland
uncountable
style.
amount of cargo ships.
Yeah. Yeah, they're just everywhere. I need to get some photos of this.
And you can see Ferris wheel, a racetrack, the river, these
What is that stadium for?
some gigantic stadium, the ocean, this crazy garden with like psychedelic looking trees. And that's just the one side. It's just a crazy view.
So as you walk around on the observation deck of the Marina Bay Sands, you can see ocean on one side and then city on the other side. And you get a really beautiful view from both directions. From the ocean side, you can see the harbor. It just goes, or the ocean, that just goes for ages. And there's a ton of really big ships out there. And then on the other side, you can see the gardens and the bay and all of the skyline.
Yeah, and so the way it actually works is the observation deck is like right at the tip of the kind of top platform. So you're actually, if you look at it from a distance, it's not above one of the buildings. It kind of just like hangs out of the air, as if it was like the bow on this like boat that sat on top of the buildings.
Yeah, it's kind of like you go up there not really realizing that, and then coming down, you're like, oh shit, I was just like hanging out over the side of a building.
Like 56 floors.
Yeah, and you can like, I don't know, it doesn't look that sturdy when you're just looking at it. So it's totally sturdy though.
So we paid something like $23 to get up on the observation deck.
Per person.
Because we thought that was the only way to get up top. And then when we came back down, we entered the lobby of the hotel, saw people going up to the and so rewind for a second. There's a restaurant up there, but they won't let you in unless you're a guest at the hotel. And we were like, oh, that kind of doesn't make business sense, and it's kind of annoying. But when we got back down, we saw people going in there, and we're like, oh, let's see if we can do that. And yeah, we were just like, hey, can we come in and get a drink? And they're like, fine. So you go in, up the elevator, and back up again to the 57th floor.
Yeah, and when we got up to the top this time, we were beside the observation deck, except a little bit closer to the infinity pool, and this sort of like lounge restaurant that turns into a club at night. And we were able to snag a seat that was like right on the glass, right beside the infinity pool. So we got a really cool view of the pool. We're sitting like right on the edge looking over, and drinks are really expensive up there. Food is also really expensive, but it's like $15 for a beer.
Yeah, it's like $15 for beer and like low 20s for a cocktail. And the Singapore dollar is about on par with the Canadian dollar, weaker than the US dollar, but yeah, still like $20 US for a cocktail.
Right. And so we were like, okay, whatever, we're here, just like completely blowing the budget on this like really cool sort of, I don't know, once in a lifetime experience at the Marina Bay Sands. But our word to the wise, or advice to anyone who's going to Singapore, is just choose one or the other. You don't need to spend money doing both unless you really want to, but you kind of get basically the same views either way.
Yeah, the view's definitely better from the observation deck. You can walk around and see both sides, whereas the bar, you just get the one side.
Right.
And if it's busy up there and you sit somewhere else, you might not get the best view, but I think going up for a beer, paying $15 is probably better than doing the observation deck. One other thing, if you do some deep Googling, there are apparently ways to get yourself up and into the infinity pool. But that was elusive to us. But we've heard some people who have done it.
We actually know somebody who's done it, but we did not do that, unfortunately.
And so after going up to the bar, having a drink, we had been going for hours, but it was still only like 1 in the afternoon. So we were like, oh, crap.
It felt like midnight.
Yeah, except for the heat and the sun. But so we decided from there, okay, let's go out and check out a movie. That'll be a good way to stay awake, keep us up later. So we found like a 6 p.m. showing of Deepwater Horizon in a mall, and we walked just back out of the harbor all the way back up to our hostel, which is in Chinatown. Checked into the hostel, got our stuff unpacked, showered, and then headed out immediately, careful not to fall asleep, to go watch a movie and kind of close off the first day without falling asleep in the afternoon.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting because I told a couple friends that we fought jet lag off by seeing a movie, and they were both like, oh, I would have fallen asleep. But Deepwater Horizon in IMAX is definitely a good choice because it's a very action-packed movie. I think you would have to be really, really tired to fall asleep during that movie. My eyes did not even hesitate at closing because I was so enthralled with the action of the movie and the story itself. And so from there, we made our way from Orchard Park Mall, which is a pretty fancy mall that was quite a bit north of downtown, all the way back on... Did we go on the MRT? No,
I think we went there on the MRT.
Right. We took an Uber home. So we made our way back on an Uber, and we were definitely passed out by like 10 p.m. There's only so long you can fight jet lag.
Yeah, and then day 2 started out. We needed to do a bit of work, but we walked over to a apparent hipster area that was near where we were living. So day 2 in Singapore, we walked up and out of Chinatown and over to a place called Tiong, Bahru. Yeah, so we're looking for food. There's a bunch of good restaurants over here. But yeah, it's kind of like almost like feels like you're in like a different city, hey, when you walk away from downtown as opposed to towards downtown.
Yeah, I mean, we really got into the heart of Chinatown, and I don't know. We haven't been to China, so I obviously don't know if it's really like China, but it feels much more like Asian, Southeast Asia, than the other parts of Singapore that we explored yesterday did.
Yeah, it's definitely like different vibe, different types of products on the street, signs are all different languages, but yeah, really excited, really hungry, and we will check in with you in a little bit. So Tiong Bahru Market is like a big ass food court with Asian style food court with about like everything that you could imagine all in one place. So currently wandering around looking for something to eat.
And it's always interesting to me because I feel like when I'm not looking for something to eat, I'm like, oh, this place looks so good. Oh, look at all this great stuff. And then when I'm actually looking, I'm like, oh, I actually don't really want to eat most of this stuff. It's hard to conceptualize eating fried fish soup at like 10 in the morning when you haven't eaten anything yet in the day. So I think that like the concept of breakfast is so different between North America and Asia. And I know that the last time we were in Asia, that was also one of the things that I struggled with the most. What about you?
Well, I mean, last time we were here, we ate a lot of English breakfast.
Yeah, I think that's what I'm trying to communicate.
But yeah, no. I mean, when it's hot as hell out and you're like, all your breakfast options are like effectively things that I consider lunch, not feeling the appetite roaring.
So after that last clip that you just heard, we walked around a little bit more in Tiong Bahru before we found somewhere to finally eat breakfast. It was nearly lunch by that point, and we were pretty much starving. And then we were on the hunt for somewhere to work, and it actually proved to be a little bit more difficult than we had initially anticipated. And we really learned that you definitely need to do research when you're looking for a cafe with good Wi-Fi and, you know, maybe accepts credit card and that's going to let you work and plug in your laptop. And so we ended up moving locations to a different sort of area of the city when we finally found something via Google. And the day kind of took an interesting turn when we checked out of our hostel and checked into our Airbnb. So the next time we check in, you'll hear that the energy is a little bit low and we're feeling a little bit blah about the present situation.
So it's the end of day 2 in Singapore, and day 2 was a bit of a rougher one. It had lots of ups, but also quite a few downs. And after a really good day yesterday, we kind of came away tonight feeling a bit like beaten up by our experience.
Yeah, it was kind of interesting. Like, so we checked in walking around looking for breakfast, and I think that's one of the things that we kind of forgot about traveling is that you don't have like meals at your fingertips. And if you're new to a city, you don't really know where you want to eat or where you like to eat. So we, walk for like half an hour, and then it takes us another like half an hour before we finally find a cafe. And we're in Singapore, so unless you eat at like the hawker stands, which is mostly like local food, you pay a ton of money. So we ended up paying quite a bit of money for our meal. And, then that doesn't feel very good because you're on a budget. And then after that, we're like, okay, we're going to go work at a cool cafe. And I think we popped our heads in like 2 or 3 cafes before we're like, okay, this is clearly like not working. And we ended up Googling and we found a cool one. What was it called again? Daily Roundup.
Daily Roundup.
Yeah. So the Daily Roundup is in Duxton in Singapore. So if anyone's looking for a cool place to work as sort of like a digital nomad, or if you have like a Skype call to make or something, and that's a great place. Really good coffee and really good food. And I think that the day kind of like picked up with that. Would you agree?
Well, yeah, so that was good. But then we went back to our hostel, and today we were making a move from our hostel, which we had for one night, into an Airbnb we booked, and we found a place that was like also near us, also in Chinatown. And when we had been walking around, you could see this really tall, really ghetto looking building.
It's like bright green.
Looks like a project essentially, but like kind of a Chinese variety. And then we were kind of wondering like, oh, I hope that's not the building we're staying in. But it was. So we moved up, had an issue getting in. The place is like what used to be like a 2-bedroom apartment, and it's been converted into like a 6-bedroom Airbnb slum house, kind of.
Yeah, so let's talk about that experience a little bit. It's, we booked this place yesterday after having been, I don't know, like a little bit screwed over, I guess, by our other Airbnb that we booked with like the safety issue that she messaged me about. That's like we arrive in Singapore with nowhere to stay, even though we like prepared somewhere to stay weeks ago. Book into this hostel, stay a night, find a new Airbnb. And then we arrive here and I have like all the directions for like getting in. And so we open the safe where our key's supposed to be and like key's not there. So it's like, okay, sweet. We've got Singapore SIM cards, so it's no worries. We've got like 4G like data, thankfully. And it's like I'm calling her, I'm messaging her on WhatsApp, I'm messaging on Airbnb. We're not hearing anything. So then we're like, okay, let's just let ourselves in with one of the keys. Like it's not for our room, but at least we can get into this place. And we get in and it's like, I don't know, a shitty hostel, basically. I think it's like a good way to describe it. Like basically like there's a divider wall between us and the room beside us, and it's like makes it like a tiny little room. So that was a bit discouraging, one of those moments where I was like, oh, we're paying so much money for this and it's really shitty and you can't really cancel, which kind of sucks. So that was kind of like our afternoon and evening was kind of all about that. And then once again we went out for dinner and we're just like searching for food that was affordable and something that was yummy and that we were going to enjoy. So it's been a bit of like a low day, I would say. Would you agree?
Yeah, and then just like couple that with like still dealing with some jet lag and having the urge to go to sleep starting at like 5 p.m. By the time we were figuring out our hostel around that time, around 5 p.m., like when we're kind of just both wanting to go to sleep and like getting to a place that looked kind of good in photos, but then just not good in reality, and really feeling like we overpaid for it too, just kind of makes you feel a little bit So yeah, but tomorrow, new day, new exploring to do, and hopefully it will be a lot better.
Yeah, I'm sure it will. We're still in Singapore, which is pretty cool. So just gotta think about the positives.
And do you have any life lessons from today?
Yeah, I think like really taking your time on Airbnb and not being rushed is something that's important.
Yeah, I feel like we just didn't have like the proper level of skepticism that I needed to have. Like looking deeply into the reviews, the pictures, the amenities, stuff like that. Because I just kind of like saw a desk, saw good Wi-Fi, saw a few good reviews. And I was like, okay, whatever, that will be good.
Yeah, same.
So, yeah, definitely a bit more skeptical in the future. But yeah, we will check in with you guys in the future. Or right now, if you're just listening to the podcast.
Yes.
So day 2 was definitely a difficult day for us, and it presented a couple different challenges that we just weren't really used to from spending a couple years sort of in more like of a stable life. And it was a reminder of how frustrating it can be when you're really hungry and all you want to do is eat something that feels like what you would eat at home. So for us, that'd be like some form of eggs. And it's so frustrating when you're like, I'll eat eggs in like any form. Like I'll eat them poached, I'll eat them scrambled, I'll eat them fried, I'll eat them in eggs Benedict. Like just give me some eggs. And it's just not what they do in Asia. That's not what they eat for breakfast. And so it proved to be quite difficult for us to find something that we wanted to eat. And it was just a reminder of how travel can be challenging in some ways. And I think that that's part of the beautiful thing about stepping outside your comfort zone, is that you don't just get to walk to your pantry and pull out your favorite box of cereal and pour yourself your morning cereal before you go off for your day.
Yeah, it's kind of like imposing some constraint on you. And so you learn to be a little bit more comfortable getting whatever instead of getting exactly what you want.
Yeah, for sure. And the other thing that I think was challenging is that we've used Airbnb so much. And Airbnb is something that I highly recommend to every single person I encounter who's taking a short trip, a long trip, any type of trip. I recommend it. And I don't take that back by any means. It's not like one mediocre experience changes my opinion of Airbnb as a whole. I just think that it was disappointing because I had so much trust in Airbnb that I was like, not looking too carefully because I've never had a bad Airbnb experience. So I think I kind of felt like, I don't know, like it just felt so disappointing to walk into that Airbnb and have that entire situation and feel like we were paying way too much money for where we were and be like, really? Like, I feel like I'm being taken advantage of a little bit.
Yeah, but that's also just like our responsibility.
Definitely. Like, I think that, since that night when we were feeling especially low in that place where the girl who was in the room beside us was cooking up like fried spam and like the whole place smelled really terrible, I re-looked at the property and I reread the reviews, and I think that there are some like very obvious things that we just missed when looking at the property. And I think it was, we booked out of need, out of desire, in a rush. Do you agree?
Yeah, I mean, we just didn't look thoroughly through it. But so we were kind of feeling like a bit like, I don't know if we want to stay here, kind of feeling the first night there. But one of the great things about travel is you kind of remember how adaptable you are. And so we both had like a pretty good night's sleep, woke up the next day, and we'll jump into a recap that we do out in Singapore. But yeah, got comfortable there pretty darn quickly.
Yeah, I mean, not like we weren't like super enjoying ourselves thinking it was the most amazing place. Like, I think there was some still like big glaring flaws, but yeah, we became comfortable to the point where it was like not unpleasant to be there.
Yeah, so we will jump back into another check-in we did at the end of day 3 down once again by the harbor in Singapore.
So it's currently the evening on day 3 in Singapore. The sun is just about to set, and we're sitting on top of the shops of Marina Bay Sands with the hotel behind us and the bay and the skyline in front of us. And everything's just starting to light up as it becomes dusk. And it's just been it's really beautiful to watch. And we've had a really great day. We started out by going to a coffee shop called The Bravery in Jalan Besar. So we went up, it's one subway or MRT stop north of Little India. So we definitely saw a change in the city once again. And then we went to this cafe that was super hipster. We're in search of Singapore's best hipster cafe. So we're just checking out new cafes every day just to get some work done and slowly finding the balance of, I guess, like digital nomad life, you could say. What did you think about today?
Yeah, good day. So we just had basically a quiet day until the evening, and then went out and explored. I think like a real like prototypical day for the future of trying to be a digital nomad and still enjoy a location. So found a cool spot to work, got a lot done, did a couple calls in the morning, and then we're able to go out, see some new areas of the city, eat some good food. And now we have this beautiful view of downtown Singapore at night as all the lights are starting to come on, and we're sitting on top of a mall in a quiet spot, able to kind of recap the day.
Yeah, and so before this, we went and got some food, slowly opening up to more of like the street food style here in Singapore. And then we went to the gardens by the bay, which is mostly free. There's some stuff that you can pay for, which we chose not to do. But they've got these really cool super trees there. Basically what we learned is that they take the tree trimmings the grasses from around the city, and they bring them over to Gardens by the Bay, and then they put those into a machine that creates energy out of them, which runs like the lights and the computers and all of that. But then by burning that, it creates, I guess, a smoke. So the smoke comes out of the super trees. And they're just really, really, really badass.
The only important thing is they look cool.
I mean, not really, but it's
debatable.
debatable.
Cool, like wire with like plants going up. And then you can see that like in a couple years, you'll see less and less of the metal and more of the like vines and plants that are growing all over them. But it's cool, like when you're on top of the Marina Sands observation deck, you can see down below you there's these cool bubbles and these trippy looking big tree things that look kind of like Avatar-esque. But then when you go over there, you get another cool view of the hotel, and then you get to see more up close what's going on with these super tree things.
Yeah, and so the reason that we came over here in the evening is that there's actually a free light show that happens on the bay right in front of the...
A water fountain.
Oh, sorry, a water fountain show. And so we came over here to check that out. So we're just currently sitting on top of the hotel, just waiting for that to start.
The mall.
I've had hiccups for like 10 minutes, probably like 15 now, and I feel like it's actually throwing off my brain capacity.
Yeah. Maybe.
So we'll check in a little bit later.
So, in case anyone caught that from the last clip, I had hiccups the entire time. And it's kind of ironic because I had hiccups right before we were about to record this as well. So, I don't know, there's something about Asia that just brings out the hiccups in me.
Yeah, so the little transition music we used there was actually from the water fountain show, which happens at the mall by the Marina Bay Sands Hotel. It's kind of nifty. It's like worth checking out. The view you get of the city from across the bay, where you look at downtown and everything's lit up because all these new skyscrapers have brilliant lights. That's definitely worth checking out. And if you're there at 8, there's a nifty fountain show where they like play video on water that's being misted out and shoot up lasers and do all sorts of crazy stuff. So it's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it's free. So if you're around, which we would both highly recommend checking out the bay at night because the view of the skyline is absolutely incredible.
Yeah. And so in Singapore, one of the biggest things to do is to check out the food courts. We've already been to one in this episode, and we've talked about a bunch. One of the most popular, though, is one which was right by where we're staying. It's called Maxwells Food Center. And it's actually had a restaurant in it that's been featured on Anthony Bourdain's shows before. It's called Tan's Chicken Rice. Super famous place. So we went down to Maxwell's to check it out.
So we are currently at Maxwell's Food Center, which is a pretty famous food center in Singapore. It's the most popular place, I guess, to go and get food. And basically what a food center means is like an Asian style food court with different vendors, more like one-off type vendors, serving like a bunch of different styles of Asian food. So we ventured out of our comfort zones and we're trying some new stuff. We've got some chicken rice and some laksa. Are you enjoying it so far?
Yeah, it's good. So yeah, here at Maxwell's, there's a famous restaurant called Tan Chicken Rice, which has been on No Reservations with Anthony Bourdain and I think a few other TV shows. And when you walk in, everything doesn't really have a line except for the one place, which has a gigantic line. But after doing some reading on the internet, we found a place called Thai, which is 2 doors down from Tan. Very similar looking sign. And apparently the person who runs that place used to be a cook at the other place and had some sort of falling out, so opened his own chicken rice restaurant and now has the effectively similar chicken rice, but no one lines up for that one. So that's what we did. And then we got some laksa from another place further down the way.
Do you want to talk about what laksa is?
What is laksa?
Laksa is rice noodles with a coconut milk base, like a coconut curry. And then it's got shrimp and egg and tofu and something else that I haven't tasted yet. It's super spicy though.
Yeah, and one of the things that's been... So we've seen quite a few different food courts in town so far, and we went to a couple of good ones that were indoors, but obviously that's not as authentic as these like outdoor ones that serve a lot of locals and a lot of tourists as well. The tough thing is it being in Asia, like it's super hot, super humid, and you go into one of these places, it's just like overwhelming smell-wise, and I feel like it kind of like eats up my appetite to be so hot. I guess we talked about this when we went to the one the other day.
Yeah, definitely, but I think it's like, just to reiterate, it's like an outdoor market with like, obviously it has a roof on it, and then there's fans going like crazy. Like just looking one direction, I see 6 of them, but it's still like, it's like an okay temperature in here. I'm not like sweating or anything, but it's definitely not like we're eating like spicy food. My nose is running, and it's like, you know, my body's already pretty warm. So it doesn't make the most comfortable eating environment, but the food is definitely amazing. I'm really impressed with this spread, and it's really cheap. So if you're looking for cheap eats in Singapore, this is definitely the place to be.
Yeah, so we are going to head out to Maxwells after we eat your lunch, and then head up to the Botanic Gardens, which are apparently one of the top things to do in Singapore. And we will check in with you guys a little bit later. So we went and explored the Botanical Gardens, which definitely live up to at least 80% of the hype. Really cool area to go check out and kind of separate yourself from this mega city that you're in the middle of. After that, we kind of just relaxed, spent most of the next day working before doing a check-in down by the bay as we watched the sunset and the golden light glimmer off of the Marina Bay Sands.
So we are currently sitting on the bay looking at the Marina Bay Sands Hotel, and we've been watching the sunset over it to see the building glow a little bit. And it's the first day that the sun has really been out, and we've seen like true blue sky since we've been here. So we rushed down here after dinner to watch the sunset, and it's been absolutely spectacular.
Yeah, and we've been working all day, kind of not really exploring too much, but...
Well, we had a pretty big exploration day yesterday. We went to the Botanic Gardens and we walked around for a number of hours. And I think that it's kind of been crazy dealing with jet lag and walking so much when we're not used to walking quite this much. And I think our bodies were just like feeling it. Like my back was killing me last night. We slept for like 10 hours and then got up and we're like, okay, it's just got to be a chill day today.
Yeah, today was really like the first day where we weren't up super early, so I feel like we're probably adjusting to the time. Maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I feel pretty good so far. I mean, it's only like 7 o'clock, but I think the last couple of nights, like, we've like put on a show or gone to read or something. It's just like I can't even keep my eyes open, which is not a normal thing for, like, I mean, we're not usually night owls, but it's not a normal thing for us to be like actually falling asleep that heavy.
Yeah, and today is the 4th day we've been here.
The 5th? 5th day.
Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Today's day number 5. So kind of like I feel like we're settling into Singapore. We've seen quite a few different areas of town. Really got to explore Chinatown. Last night was Saturday night, and we were staying in this big complex called like the People's Park complex, which is just like, it feels like you're in Beijing essentially or somewhere like that. And so it was like really alive last night. Tons of people out drinking, selling stuff, playing music. So that was really cool to see. And then we've been out able to go eat at a few more food courts, so that's been cool. We've been like finding the places to get cheap and affordable food here. So
yeah, and it's kind of been interesting because we've kind of, I guess, kind of tried to get into a routine where we like spend money on one meal a day and then we go to like one of the hawker stands for one of the other meals. And it's just crazy looking at the difference in the prices. Like we just went to Starbucks to get, you know, an iced beverage to watch the sunset, and it cost as much as my dinner just did, which was like a massive plate with the rice and a bunch of different sides and stuff like that. And then, you know, you can go get a salad at like a nice cafe for like $17, and it's like a tea costs $4, and And that's just like Starbucks is like that much. And then you can go to these stalls and eat for like $4 to $6 and get so much food. So there's massive difference from the different places within Singapore.
Yeah, people told us coming in that it was like quite an expensive place. And you can kind of see that in some ways. Like, it's very easy to spend a lot of money here, but it's also like possible to not spend that much money. It's still going out. Like if you go to the hawker stands, if you stay in certain areas of town, it's not too expensive. The transit's pretty affordable, like all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I feel like we should talk about the transit for a second because that's been one of my favorite things in Singapore. I often don't really like subways or, I don't know, light rail or whatever. Here it's called the MRT, which is Mass Rapid Transit, and it's so clean because you're not allowed to eat or drink on it. We were like eating chips the other day and I was like looked around realizing that nobody else is eating. Then I look up and see, oh, it's a $500 fine if you're caught eating on the train. So we like put the chips back in the bag, obviously, like back in our bigger bags so nobody would see them. And it's just like, you know, interesting to think about how they have these rules. Yeah, that's why it's so clean. There's no crumbs, there's no food, there's no gum. Gum's illegal here.
But the other thing, so yeah, they are harsh penalties, so that probably contributes. But one thing that's been interesting for me to see is that there's just like hardly any cops around. Like, I think we've seen a couple cop trucks.
I don't even think I've seen any
I don't think
of
we've
those.
seen a single police officer over the 5 days we've been here.
No, like I've seen security guards. Like there's quite a few security guards around different places.
At like individual buildings or malls.
Yeah. But there isn't really that many, cops. And the other thing that's really cool, and, you know, we're sitting outside right now, so obviously there's voices in the background, but something that you may or may not notice is that there's no sirens. Like, the city is just so quiet.
Yeah, relative to its size. Yeah, no sirens, no honking.
Yeah, oh yeah, definitely relative to its size. But it feels like a quiet, like, small town in terms of noise, you know?
Yeah.
Like, we could be in a rural area with people around.
I don't know, a rural area.
Well, like, there's people, but there's not really noise. I think we've heard, I could count on one hand how many sirens we've heard in 5 days, which is crazy because when we lived in Atlanta, it was like, as soon as you were on, like, Peachtree, it was like, within 100 meters, you would hear 5 sirens.
Yeah, and then so we're right down by that. There's this like lion mermaid spitting water down in the bay in Singapore, and this is like the busiest area around here. So there's a ton of people around watching the sunset, and now that it's past sunset, all the buildings light up, and the Ferris wheel and the mall all kind of light up. So you can hear that going on in the background.
Yeah, it's pretty spectacular. We've snapped lots of photos, so we'll of course put them in the show notes. And yeah, it's just been a really, really cool 5 days.
Yeah, and so we've talked to a couple people who have said things like Singapore isn't a great place to spend a long time from a traveling perspective. But we really, really enjoyed being here. It's like, I think, a really great city to work in because there's a ton of cool spots to do it at. There are a ton of different areas to check out, and like a lot of it seems like there's very like photogenic, cool attractions to go to, but also just like cool neighborhoods to walk around in, food courts to go check out and eat at, stuff like that.
Yeah, and there's lots of different like cultural hubs of the city. So we mentioned Chinatown, and then there's also a place called Little India where you can get all like the local Indian cuisine. And there's also there's a huge like Malaysian influence here, so you can also get the Malaysian food as well. But whenever you go in the hawker stands, you get like basically everything, like Japan, Vietnamese, Thai.
Yeah. So now that we've got 2 days left before we head to Manila, what are some of the things on your list that you want to go check out?
Well, there's a nature reserve that I'm interested in going to see. I think that'll be cool. We go to that. Little India I want to get up to. We also saw the other day that there's this gondola, and I guess it goes over a mountain in Singapore over to this island called Sentosa Island, which apparently has beaches and stuff. So I'm kind of intrigued by that if we have time. I don't know if we will or not. But mostly just checking out like more hipster cafes, finding like cool places to work. We're going to go to a complimentary yoga class tomorrow night. I'm excited about that because yoga is really expensive here, and our room that we're staying in is super, super tiny. What about you?
So yeah, Little India. We watched an episode of Anthony Bourdain's show prior to No Reservations. I think it's called The Cooks.
It's like crazy old. You guys should check it out. It's interesting.
And it's crazy to see how Singapore was like modern at that time, early 2000s, and now 15 years later, it like blows that away. It's crazy to see that it's still just developing so fast. But he went around and ate at a lot of the cool street markets, which still all exist. And we've been staying in Chinatown, so we've seen a lot of the Chinese side of the city. But then also two other areas. There's the Indian side of the city and the Malaysian side of the city, which we haven't gone to explore too much. So Little India is definitely on our map for tomorrow. There's a cat cafe near where we're staying that we're going to go check out. Not really like on my hit list, but it's something that sounds interesting we haven't done before. So yeah, the next 2 days, we still got to keep doing some work. Got to prep the next leg of our trip and then check out a few more areas of the city. But we will keep updating you guys as we go.
Yeah.
So the cat cafe that we went to after we checked in at the harbor was definitely a unique experience. It was a little bit different than I expected because we had to pay a fee to actually get into the cafe, and that came with a drink, but then it was kind of a basic drink. So if you wanted something more, you had to pay a little bit extra. And then you go in and there's all these rules that she went over with us. Like we had to wash our hands on the way in and we had to take our shoes off. And there's all these rules about how you behave with the cats, which was, I don't know what I had in my mind, but I think it was more like, oh, we just walk in this cafe and there's like cats sitting all over the place. Like kind of like that place that we ate at in Koh Tao or Koh Phi Phi years ago.
Yeah, it's weird. You walk in and they're in their own like enclosed room, which is very like house-like at the one we went to.
Yeah.
I always pictured it being like, a cafe with a bunch of cats milling about.
Yeah, exactly.
But the feeling it gave me was what I imagine it would feel like going to like a brothel kind of, but like way turned down. Because it's like, it costs like $14 for your first hour. And then there's this like big list of rules and you have to go like clean yourself up.
It's like a cat brothel.
I know. It feels like you're not exploiting, but like, you know what I mean? Like you're paying for the cat's affection. Then you go in there and you're like, they don't want to play with you. They've been playing with people all day.
Yeah, and I think too they're just like used to different humans coming in, so they're like not all about it. I don't know. They didn't seem that jazzed up about our presence, but we did get to see feeding time, which was pretty interesting. There was one fat cat that kept like taking all the cat's food, which was funny. There was 10 cats, so pretty exciting times.
Yeah, the group dynamic is definitely interesting.
I think I would go again though.
Yeah, and then the next day in Singapore, we rode the train down to the harborfront stop, which is by Sentosa Island. One of the really nice things about traveling Singapore is how good the trains are there. The light rail transit, or I guess medium rail transit, because it's called the MRT.
No, it's actually called it's Mass Rapid Transit.
Oh.
Yeah, MRT.
But yeah, the stops are all super clean. It's very affordable. The trains are super nice. We had a funny moment one day where we were hungry, so we bought a bag of chips, allegedly, and we were eating it on the train, allegedly. And then we were like eating, and Amanda's looking around and is like, oh, wow, like no one else eats on here. That's weird. Look up at a sign, and it's like $500 fine for eating on the train.
Yeah, they
allegedly.
Also will fine you if you bring durian on the train.
Well, so that's funny. I posted a picture on Facebook, but it's like eating or drinking on the train, $500 fine. Smoking on the train, $1,000 fine. I can't remember what the next thing was. $2,000 fine. No durian, and there's no fine information, but it's like on this scale, and it's blank, and you're like, ooh, ominous.
What are they going to do if you bring a durian on? What if you start eating a durian on the train? Clearly their rules are highly effective, though, in keeping, like, there's no litter. It took like a couple times riding it before I was like, holy shit, this train has been on time every time. It's super efficient. We never waited more than 3 minutes for a train, and it doesn't smell.
Yeah, it usually costs like $2 maybe.
Yeah, so when you think about like the major sort of like, I guess, like light rail or mass rapid transit type train stations that I've been to in the world. It's like, I think of like London, Paris, New York, and they're all super gross. Like they smell bad. It smells like somebody's like taking a crap like down there. And yeah, just no scent in the Singapore MRT. It's really pleasant.
Yeah, and I imagine, so Singapore for us was good because we were coming from Canada. We weren't really adjusted to Southeast Asia prices, so it was fun. It wasn't expensive relative to what we were used to. But I would imagine coming the opposite way, like when you've been in Thailand and, Vietnam, all these other places, coming to Singapore would be really cool after traveling there for a while, because then you get to see, wow, I can take the train everywhere. There's so many nice places to go. It's so safe. It's so clean. Would be a really good break if you were coming that direction on your trip.
Totally.
So one of the last things that's kind of on a standard to-do list in Singapore that we hadn't done was Sentosa Island, which is kind of, I believe it's a man-made island with all these kind of amusement park features on it. So we took the MRT all the way over to harborfront and went to check it out.
Harborfront Terminal. 港湾终点站 Please mind the gap. 请小心空隙 We're happy to leave you on platform. The incident
So we are walking through another one of Singapore's glamorous and clean train stations, this one being the harborfront train station, and we are going out to Sentosa Island, which is an island. What else is on Sentosa Island?
There's like Universal Studios and some hotels and beaches and stuff like that. It's kind of like that type of island.
Yeah, so like the recreation spot.
Yeah, but we're not doing any of that. We're just going to check it out and hang out. There's a cable car you can take, so just doing a little bit of exploration since today is our last day in Singapore.
Yeah, we don't play that shit.
Oh yeah?
As you know. So that might be something we cut out from this episode, or maybe not. Yeah, there's a cool cable car that runs over to the island, which we thought would be a fun time to ride in. But apparently the internet says it's closed, so we're going to go try to figure that out. Looks like it's moving, though. Yeah, yesterday we spent the day working and then went and checked out a free meditation event at a Lululemon store in Duxton Road, Singapore.
Yeah, it's super cool that there's 3 Lululemons here, and so I knew that there was Lululemon here since I worked for the company for so long, and then I checked out their Facebook page and they had a bunch of free events, so we're actually going to go to one tonight as well. And it's amazing just being able to do like free yoga and meditation because it's really expensive here in Singapore.
Yeah, like shockingly expensive. It's like $30 a class. But yeah, we need to get this podcast sponsored by Lululemon. I feel like we talk about them an outrageous amount of time.
Yeah.
Probably too much. I know. Probably too much. But it is something cool to keep in mind. They've got stores quite all over the place. And they all do free events, like free yoga classes, free fitness classes, and other stuff. So really good resource to keep in mind while you're traveling, if you're traveling in North America, especially Asia, Europe.
Yeah, there's countries. There's stores in Europe as well as they just opened their first couple stores in Dubai.
And just in general, like keeping in mind places where you can get free stuff is always important while you travel. I know like brands like Patagonia, it's quite a few brands are doing stuff like that now.
Yeah, Patagonia offers complimentary events. I mean, even we saw, I think here Under Armour was doing some free like run club or fitness style things. So just thinking about which brands you know and love and seeing what type of events they have to offer in the city that you're in, because I don't know, that's the biggest thing that a lot of people worry about. I know it's something that I'm concerned about is like, you know, my health and fitness is really important to me, and how can I maintain that while I'm on the road? Obviously you walk a lot and you sweat a lot if you're in a hot country, but is that really enough to keep yourself healthy? And mental health as well is important. Like that meditation was pretty amazing for us since we've had, some ups and downs with our Airbnb specifically while in Singapore, and that's been a bit stressful.
Yeah, so we got to a new Airbnb and we were like feeling a little bit uncomfortable, and then kind of like settled in, and then some like weirdness was happening where like there was like way more people entering and leaving one of the rooms than like should have been there, and some guy tried to get into our room one night.
Well, I mean, so you say that, but it was actually accidental. They were just looking for the room. He seemed like genuinely accidental, but it was creepy. And I think the thing that made me feel sketchy out of it, I was like, drugs are super illegal here. Like super illegal. Like death penalty illegal. Like what if there's people like dealing drugs in this room down the hall from us and we're like involved by association? It's probably not the case, but I just got paranoid.
But that's kind of like the typical like early travel paranoia, I feel like. Like where like I could kind of relate to like feeling like, oh, what about our like stuff? Because these guys like seemed a bit sketchy. And then like I feel like it's the type of thing later on in your trip where you're just like, well, whatever.
Yeah, you're like early, fishy people.
You're
whatever.
so used to like being at home in your nice spot with like nothing to worry about. And at the start, it's easy to feel more nervous or afraid.
Definitely, yeah. Like it's definitely not our like small town where you can just leave our door unlocked constantly. So yeah, definitely a little bit more paranoia, and hopefully that'll ease up. I'm glad that we did start in Singapore though, because Singapore is like the richest country in Southeast Asia in general, and it's just been interesting walking around and seeing how calm and peaceful it is, yet still being Asia and being like, wow, if we were in Bangkok, this would be so much more crazy.
Yeah, it's funny, and it's funny like popping down here to the beach, and like it's another sunny day, there's palm trees, you can see the water, it's hot. I feel like it's like almost you lose the sense that you're in the tropics while you're like walking around Singapore a lot of the time.
Oh, yeah, for sure. It's like a massive city. Even one of the girls I was talking to at Lululemon was like, her husband's Canadian, she's Russian, and they live here. She was like, yeah, I think that we might move to Toronto just so that we can get like closer access to like lakes and outdoors and stuff like that. Like she's like, there's not really like that much outdoor activity here.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like a big city-state. But we are off to check out this cable car and Sentosa Island, and we will check back in with you a little bit later.
So we are currently on the cable car leaving Sentosa Island. What did you think about Sentosa?
It was pretty nifty. It's pretty darn hot, so I feel like we're kind of like medium rare now. Yeah, so on Sentosa Island, it's like I don't know, kind of like a theme park island. So there's the Universal Studios here. There's like attractions. There's a beach. It's kind of funny though, when you go out to the beach, there is like the harbor, or whatever you want to call it, in front of Singapore is there. So there's just all these cargo ships, like more in one place than you've seen, and it's like right in front of the beach. So that's kind of funny. It's like nothing makes you want to swim like a view of cargo ships 100 yards away.
Yeah, definitely. And something always weirds me out a little bit about like a makeshift, like a fake man-made beach, which is definitely like what they've done. There's kind of like little islands off the main island, and it looks like definitely like a man-made area. It's a pretty cool little like park resort area though, especially if you had children. Like there's hotels here, there's zip lines, there's restaurants, there's the cable car that runs like to and from the island, but also like across the island, so you can go to different places. There's a beach walk, you can rent bikes, there's what else, segways. There's a ton of different activities that you can do while you're there. So definitely like a fun place to go if you have kids. I think it was cool for us to experience, but definitely not like the highlight of Singapore for me by any means.
Yeah, and it's a little expensive to take a cable car to do like activities, so.
Do you think it's worth a visit though?
I don't know.
I mean, if you've got a week like we do, if you've got like 2 days, I don't think it's in like something I would do in 2 days. If I only had a couple days here.
Yeah.
2 or 3 days.
Yeah, and then so the cable car attaches up to like a mountainous viewpoint on the other side, so we're gonna go check that out and get a good view of the city.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because we can see it from a distance right now, and it's like the highest mountain in Singapore, and it's definitely more like a mound. Like almost every skyscraper is bigger than it. So we will check in a little bit later and let you all know how we liked the Farrer Mountain.
So when we arrived at the top of Farrer Mountain, the viewpoint was actually closed, so we weren't really able to get much of a view from up there. And there is some green space where you can walk around, but we were both pretty tired and pretty hungry by that point. So we made the executive decision to take the cable car back down to the harborfront station to get a train over to Little India to get a very large plate of Indian food.
So we just got off the MIRT at the Little India stop after taking it up from the harbor where we were down at Sentosa. Singapore is really composed of three main ethnicity groups. There's Chinese, Indian, and Malay. So each kind of has their own neighborhood of town, but there's a lot of like intermingling everywhere. We've been staying in Chinatown, so we've been really eager to get up here to Little India and check that out. We kind of came close to go to a cafe called The Bravery the other day. But now we are here, right in the heart of Little India, and we're going to go find some food to eat.
Yeah, and something that's really interesting is like stepping off the train in what you feel like should be like a whole different world because the culture is kind of different. But in Singapore, it's like it looks different with sort of the architecture and the people and that sort of thing. But other than that, it's like, you know, it's relatively the same. It doesn't sound different. It doesn't smell different. Like it's not really a different world, but it kind of is, if that makes sense. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, I mean a little bit. It's like a different area within the same city. I think we've actually might have already walked up Serangoon Street the other day.
I think we did.
When we came by. But yeah, we mentioned the other day there's an episode of one of Anthony Bourdain's shows from Singapore that we watched the other day to kind of get some food inspiration, even though it's quite old. He goes to Tekka Market, which is like a big food court up here in Little India, so we're going to cruise through that in a bit. And then also to a place called Mustafa Center, which is this like crazy department store that has like literally everything imaginable and is just completely gigantic, kitschy, dream world kind of thing. But the restaurant we are going to try to check out is not at Tekka Center. It is a vegetarian restaurant somewhere around here, and we're walking over there to check it out, and we will check in with you later on.
So we've made our way from the restaurant called Kamala Villas, where we had some delicious Indian vegetarian food, over to the Tekka Center to get some pul tea, which we saw on Anthony Bourdain's show. What is it called again? No Cooks or something? Something about cooks. And basically, they take tea and they put it with sweetened condensed milk, and then they're supposed to kind of put it from glass to glass to cool it off and make it foamy. And our experience has been a little bit disappointing. He didn't really pull it. He did a little bit, I guess, but not the way it was on the show.
Yeah, it's funny on the show they take one and the other and like get this like arm's length exaggerated pouring of one thing into the other. This guy kind of like poured it from one cup back forth like twice over like a second and a half, and dumped it in a cup, stuck it on the table. It was like $1 and turned away from us with like contempt. I think for just buying one drink.
At least it was only $1 though, but it is actually really delicious.
Yeah, and it's cool coming out and checking out this market because like this one is definitely a little bit more diverse than some of the other ones we've been, where it's like just like straight
like Asian food, I guess.
Well, Indian's Asian too, but
yeah.
It was like the other ones would be like whatever, Singaporean. Yeah, the other one's pretty diverse too, but this one's got like a bunch of Indian stuff, but then also all the other stuff that you'd seen at all the other places. It's big, it's loud, it's kind of exciting, but it is also just like absurdly hot out here.
And we're drinking a hot beverage.
Which is probably not as nice.
But it's delicious.
So from there, we made our way back to our apartment in Chinatown. We had a little bit of a relaxing rest of our afternoon into our evening before we went to another free yoga class with Lululemon. And then we packed our bags and went to bed pretty early because we had to get up at 4 a.m. to fly to Manila the next day. And so overall, what did you think about Singapore?
Really, really liked it. It's kind of funny. We met quite a few people while we were there and then afterwards who didn't really like Singapore. But also some people who did. And then I formerly was in the like it camp.
Yeah, I think it all depends on sort of your situation. I know I talked to one friend who has also been there and she said, yeah, Singapore is great, but it's a little bit less adventurous, which is totally true. They speak English everywhere. It's super clean. It's not scary to cross the streets because there's crosswalks with pedestrian signs that people obey. Everyone's really nice and friendly. You don't have to worry about your stuff. Like there is a lot of that like adventure of being in Southeast Asia that's not really there in Singapore.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's also expensive. It is more comparable to being in Canada, the US, Mexico, not Mexico. I don't know why I said that. Canada, the US, Australia, somewhere that's more first world because it is a developed country. It is the richest country in Asia.
And if you look at, in terms of purchasing power, maybe the richest country in the world.
Right. Right. So, I mean, there's a reason why it's expensive. And I think that there's a lot of pros that come alongside that, like a very clean and efficient train system. And, you know, a beautiful hotel like the Marina Bay Sands that's kind of out of this world. And so I really loved it as well. I'm definitely with you. I think it's amazing. I do understand the things that kind of dissuade people from staying there long term or from being kind of like meh about it. I think it's all what you're looking for within your trip. And if you can go into it just having a really open mind, I think that you can have a great time regardless of if you're coming from Thailand or from Canada.
Yeah, and I think that one thing we talked about doing before we got there was not committing to a long time in one place. And then we kind of changed our minds because of the weird circumstances. We ended up booking something for 6 days. But that's something I would probably rethink looking back on it. There's so many cool areas of Singapore that it's fun to be able to check out a few different ones. So if you're going to be there for a week or something, definitely worth not booking one thing for the whole time and trying out a few different areas.
Yeah, definitely. I think that was probably the only part of the trip that wasn't amazing. And the only thing that I would probably do differently next time is our accommodation situation.
So that's the only thing you'd do differently?
Maybe try like more street food. I think that I was like, you know, we got so sick when we were in South America. And I feel like there's just, you eat something and you get kind of this like intuitively bad feeling about what you just put in your mouth. And then, you know, you spend the whole next day in evacuation mode. And that's really unpleasant when you're traveling. So I think that there's this temptation to stick to stuff that you know is not going to make you sick. And Singapore is the type of place that really allows you to stay within your comfort zone of food. And I think that we did get outside of it, but I think we could have spent less money if we were consistently outside of that comfort zone.
Yeah, and I think that just like jumping straight into like food court life would have been awesome. It's tough though because like getting acclimatized to the heat is hard, and so when you're outdoors and it's like 32 and humid, you crave like going into that air-conditioned restaurant and getting your food there instead of cooking with your food out of the food court.
Right, exactly. And there's also the difference between, you know, summertime, I crave more like light foods like juices and salads, which is what is pretty expensive. In Singapore, I don't really crave like spicy laksa and curries and things that are going to make my body even hotter than it already is. So that was a little bit of like a challenge, but I think that, you know, those things come with time as you adjust to being on the road.
And so if we were going back, what neighborhood would you try to stay in?
Ooh, good question. Maybe like closer to like Little India, maybe Duxton. there's lots of cool areas of the city. I think I would definitely want to stay in a couple different ones to get some different experiences. I did like Chinatown. I was really pleased with the hostel we stayed at the first night. Great location too, the MRT. I think that anywhere near an MRT is a good location, really.
Yeah, and the MRT is really good, so you can find it all over the place. But yeah, the first hostel, we stayed at a hostel called Berry Best, or a Berry Best hostel, which was solid. And then Airbnb up in Chinatown the rest of the time. So if you want to find out more information and specifics about what we did, you can check out the show notes on theworldwanderers.com, as well as photos from our trip. We've got some really cool ones, and I think it adds a lot to the episode. If you guys have any comments or suggestions about things that people need to do when they're in Singapore, definitely send those our way. Or if you have deeper questions about a trip you're planning there, let us know.
As always, thanks for listening.
Ciao. To find more information, relevant links, and photos talked about in this week's episode, check out theworldwanderers.com.
If you have a question, comment, or feedback, send us an email at info@theworldwanderers.com. Join our community on Facebook at The World Wanderers or on Twitter at World Wanderers 1. As always, thanks so much for listening.
Have a great day.
Bye.